Hey guys, Cat9 here, and as you can tell from the title of the video, I'm going to be explaining the crumbling European infrastructure and society in the ArmA 3 universe. Now, I've already mentioned this phenomenon in the ArmA 3 universe before on my Is ArmA 3 Realistic video, which I'll link down below. I've just said that I don't think it's realistic. I don't reckon it would even happen in the first place. That only serves the plot line, and it only explains that the CTRG team is the only British commitment to Altus and Stratus. Now this has been scattered throughout the ArmA 3 campaigns and missions and all that Europe is crumbling and really in need of some support, and it's losing control of all of its former colonies, so it's got no support to help it rebuild itself. So it's basically turning into a massive cluster F, if you know what I mean. All the countries basically not trusting each other, and the European Union's just crumbling, and society as it stands is just destroyed. And also their exchange cash is going down, and CSAT and everything on the east is going up, which means the West has lost a major piece in its society and way of life. Europe gone, that only leads Northern America and a bit of Oceania to the west, which means the east can really exploit that, and they have been exploiting it in the ArmA 3 universe by taking ground that was originally Western, either found by British or occupied by the Americans, such as Malden. Malden, even though America didn't discover Malden, they had an air base there, and it turned over to CSAT over time. That's the same with the Eastwind incident, that Altus and Stratus were NATO and AEF, but then over a course of like a year, CSAT really took over. They were the dominant force in the area, or maybe the whole Mediterranean, as there was a strategic fault line in between crumbling European infrastructure and also the rising CSAT alliance. So it was a major part in the ArmA 3 story that really wasn't explained, and I'm here to explain it today. But most of it's just speculation, because we've only got a few details on what it is. So I'm gonna try my best, try my best with not much information. Now let's look. Most ArmA 3 events have happened before in real life, or have at least taken some ideas from real life and some inspiration from real life. So let's take a look at why the ArmA 3 makers Bohemia Interactive, I think it was called, thinks that Europe would crumble, as they've seen a similar pattern that just goes down a path of crumbling. Now, the first thing that's happened in our lifetime is the UK disbanding from the European Union, which I don't remember if they have yet, but they're at least planning to. The majority of their citizens say leaving the EU, probably because they had a weird contract. It's a bit like the UN. Australia and New Zealand and Italy and all these had something come to us from the UN stating you have to take in this many immigrants. Now, of course, it's ridiculous. Australia knew it was ridiculous because we're basically full at the moment, and New Zealand agreed with us that they were also beginning to get pretty full, so we declined that thing, and the UN basically flipped out and went crazy and really didn't like how Australia and New Zealand and Italy and some other countries declined this intake of immigrants. So I reckon it's a bit like the EU accept. Instead of declining it, the only way to decline it is to leave it altogether, which would mean that there's a separated Europe, which means it's sort of unstabilized. And at this point in time in 2019, Europe is not a place you want to have a trip, if you know what I mean. We've seen it for years and years that Europe is not in a good place right now, and no one seems to know a resolution, for this. So if it's unchecked, then it continues to do what it's doing and nothing changes. That will continuously bring Europe on a downward slope, which should basically mean that Europe would be screwed if they don't check this stuff over a period of time. Now, the stuff that I think that they should check up on to make sure it doesn't actually happen in real life is to check their immigration. There's so much illegal immigration in Europe right now because the people from the Middle East and Northern Africa know that it's just a walk or a boat ride into Europe's centre, and they're not really trying to flee war because they're walking all the way to Germany and France and then to England. But there's so many other stops on the way with no war. They're going for the benefits. And for some reason, the governments of those countries are not recognising it. So that could be a reason why it's crumbling, and terrorist attacks happen like every month or two. Well, it's worldwide as well, every month or two, but majority of it happens in Paris and England and all that. So much going on, you don't really want to go there. Especially the rapes and all that. That really destabilizes the region. Having this much influx of sometimes bad people. Terrorists are extremely bad people. And also the rapists that they bring over. It's very unchecked. Thankfully in Australia, though, we've got an extremely difficult visa system as well. If you want to come over to Australia, we'll say no to Snoop Dogg. And probably Johnny Depp as well. He tried to smuggle those dogs in. America and all some other countries have got rabies, and the dogs weren't checked when they came over, so we basically sent him back on his way. Not coming down here to Queensland for a little bit, Johnny Depp. Gotta apologise for what you did. That sort of is the base plate for a crumbling Europe. And it's very divided at the moment. There's a lot of... I don't know the word for it, but it's very, very divided. I don't know if you guys have heard the term the right and the left. Well, a lot of people go for the right. I think majority of Europe at the moment is left, but that is slowly changing to the right. Like we've seen in Sweden how they had a dramatic change. At first they were like, oh, it's a free nation, like anyone is welcome. And then they realised that that was a big mistake. And now they realise how good the government's doing. Because I think that there was a couple of terrorist attacks there. And also the European media is doing a lot like what they did in World War II. It's like propaganda, saying that everything's okay and not really speaking the truth. It's not a free nation. That's what it's called. Free nation is where all types of media is uncensored and can be brung out to the world, where most media centres have got their own agenda, even though its propaganda is not signed off on the governments, at least that we can tell. But it is the media's propaganda. They're not really saying it, and really preventing people from having a decision or having an idea that's against what they want. So that sort of is a real bad thing. As I said before, unchecked evil could really screw up everything, which there's a lot of evil in Europe at the moment. Had a choice the other week to go to it, and I was like, don't want to die, don't want to get beheaded or something. So Europe, not a good place at the moment, and ArmA 3 probably took a bit from that, thinking, oh yeah, you know, Europe is in a bad spot and it's probably not going to change at all anytime soon. So in 2035, it's going to be in a complete chaos. Which I gotta agree with that. It will definitely be in a really bad state. Now, they would have taken terrorism, the unrest, and also they predicted the that, what's that vest called? That, I forgot what the vest is called. It's like those people in France that were writing about oil prices. Now that, and also that there were riots in Ukraine for increasing increasing international relationships with Russia. There were riots there, and as it says in the starting of the East Wind campaign, that there were riots in Rome, which Rome is doing okay so far. There hasn't been many terrorist attacks there, even though soldiers roam the streets and all that. Same with Belgium, they've got a lot of problems with that. And also the economy is going downwards basically. No one's really wanting to touch Europe at the moment, except for America. President Trump is, for some reason, not scared of, trying to help out Europe. He's tried his best, but it's probably not going to be good enough to bring it back. Would CSAT then send in Viper regiments to further destabilize the region? Now, I think CSAT probably would have hesitated a little bit to send their special forces into that territory because it could spark off a war if they are caught. But I reckon they would have waited a bit and then realised that the governments are really falling apart and the police departments aren't really paying attention, that they can utilise it, which would further destabilise the region. So that's probably what happened, is they called in CSAT's Viper Regiment to send some teams over there and destabilise each country. At this point in time, we don't really know if there's wars in between the countries in Europe, which would be interesting, and I reckon could happen in our lifetime, is wars within Europe, like Germany against Hungary or France in a civil war. It's probably more going to be civil wars than conventional warfare. Now, the exchange and their money and all that is an important aspect of it as well, seeming that the military for Europe is basically non-existent except for the UK Special Forces. But the only way I can think of them only using Special Forces is if their budget was so low that they can only afford a few Special Forces units, and they couldn't afford to feed or pay soldier regulars or even get enough fuel for tanks or vehicles or helicopters, which would make sense assuming that we only see the just Special Forces troops. We do see vehicles sometimes, but that's mainly the American CTRG in the Pacific, where Captain Miller's team was just their team, and equipment and all that. And it wasn't like the UK was paying to feed them. They probably would have eaten off of the Americans' food in the mess. Which Would also make a lot of sense if they couldn't afford to rebuild sort of stuff. They would go out to their former colonies, try and help them up a little bit so that they can give something in return, which was their strategy to get out of this cluster F, and basically do it for themselves and screw every other country. So they decided to start doing that. It was a project, I forgot what, or operation, where humanitarian people went out from the UK and basically started doing that helpful stuff, which would also make sense in today's society. They would probably look to Australia or New Zealand for help, or India, and we would say yes, but to an extent. Because if you ever wondered why Australia and the UK aren't as friendly with each other anymore, it's because in World War II we asked for our troops back because we had our troops at France and Australia was under attack, so they wouldn't let our troops go. Like, what type of people would do that? And we also asked for support, but we didn't get it. Americans, for all the people, of all the people that were our friends back then, just didn't help us. The Americans, for some reason, helped us, you know. Who would have thought America helping us? It's weird, America don't help nothing. They took so long to get into the war, why would they help us? But yeah, that's why we're so friendly with America nowadays. But yeah, Europe, it's basically at the ArmA 3, is no point of return, and status quo, the CTRG teams are trying to help rebuild the countries and sort of help out Europe a bit more, but it's failing. It's a failing operation. CTRG's trying to get the upper hand in case there is a war. They would have the technology that they would need to win it. Even though other countries might have bigger militaries than the UK, they'll certainly have the upper hand in technology, which is the idea of what they were trying to do. Which is pretty understandable. When you're that desperate, you start to do some crazy things and bring out some crazy protocols, which are pretty sane if you're thinking of the survival of your country or Europe. But assuming that if you did complete the East Wing campaign in the way it should have been, which is screw Captain Miller and his team and go finish the fight, if you chose that ending, Europe could be on the way to rebuilding itself, assuming that CSAT is crumbling at the end, which would mean Europe would get its money back, its change back, and also be on the pathway to rebuilding itself, but very slowly. Probably as slow or slower than it took for them to get to that point where there was just a few Special Forces teams from the Special Air Service or something, SBS, Special Boat Service, stuff like that. Well, hopefully that'll open you guys' eyes to the crumbling European infrastructure and society and all that in the game. Hopefully that new information opened your eyes for the ArmA 3 universe. Like, I know that not many people know that Bohemia Interactive takes stuff from real life into the game and predictions and all that. You can see on is ArmA 3 realistic that they took a lot of equipment from real life and just predicted what it would look like in 2035 and where we would be, and they just saw Europe as crumbling, probably like a new Middle East, and hopefully CSAT doesn't invade it. CSAT invades it, boom, they just copy it and paste it and put other names on it from the Middle East catastrophe conflict. Which I also mentioned that there's a possibility that they took the East Wing campaign from real life as well, with CSAT and all that. CSAT as Russia and NATO as America as it is, but the Ultrasound Forces as the Afghan National Army and police force. So it's definitely something to think about. I know this video's been a long time coming, but I extended it quite a bit. I know it went for long, even though there's not much information on it that we can tell. It's just that Europe's crumbling in this timeline, and they may be on the way to recovery. Probably not. And Bohemia Interactive, I think, is justified to think that Europe's crumbling, well, on the way to crumbling in our timeline. Because, man, I don't know a single person, and I know a whole lot of people that would want to go to Europe. No, no one really. No. Europe, if you're from Europe, I clap to you, because, man, I've heard unemployment rates through the roof in some countries in Europe, and you guys aren't getting paid enough or something like that, and housing's crap, and having a terrorist attack every few months, man, that'd be difficult. Australia's been through a phase where there were multiple terrorist attacks in the same months, and that was pretty hard. There was a lot of untrust, and really cultural clashes were in the rise. Lots of people got hurt, lots of people died, lots of people got raped, which for some reason terrorists like to do that as well. So, but ending on a bit of a serious note, sorry guys, but ArmA 3 is pretty serious, I must say. Hopefully see you guys on the next video. Catfights 9 out. And sorry once again, it took a bit of a dark turn at the end, but it is the truth. You know, if you guys don't know it, you may end up dying again. Something like that. So, Catfights 9 out.